Hello and welcome back to Pay Down Debt Solutions. On this channel, we teach you how to get out of your debts faster using Velocity Banking. So if you don't know what Velocity Banking is, you're about to find out, so stick with us. And today we're going to go over how you can control your debt using lines of credit. It doesn't matter if it's a personal line of credit, a home equity line of credit, you can even do this with credit cards. You see, Velocity Banking is a very unique style of banking, of running finances, where you are putting your income into a line of credit, such as those three that I just talked about, and running all of your expenses out. So this will be a quick video today, and I wanted to go over it because I talked to you guys, I think it was about 2 videos ago, where I said that there was a situation where I had a couple that one of them has very poor credit and has entered some debts into a debt repayment plan, and they were able to get a home equity line of credit to work their debt down. So I want to talk to you guys about that situation, and we're going to run it for you and show you what we have come up with for them. But I want to talk today about using credit cards or other lines of credit to get yourself out of debt and what that looks like. So right now, if you're sitting in the traditional banking system, you are running into perpetual problems, probably with debt, because you haven't learned how to handle your debt. You just do what everybody else does, right? And so when you do what everybody else does, it leaves you in the same situation as everyone else. But when you learn how to run your finances just a little bit differently through Velocity Banking, you will come out ahead, and you will come out ahead much faster. So you'll see that today. Now, why does Velocity Banking work? Because of something called the average daily balance. Okay, so the average daily balance feature lowers your balance and lowers interest. Okay, so it lowers it because when you put a big chunk payment in, right, your line then drops immediately, like the second you put it in. And so if you run your income into that line of credit, it's going to perpetually drop your interest and drop your balance, meaning you're going to owe a lot less than you would if you continue to make your regular payments. Okay. Now, Velocity Banking requires a line of credit. So if you do not have the ability to get a line of credit or use a line of credit, such as a credit card, home equity, business line of credit, okay, all lines, then you cannot run a Velocity Banking strategy. So I have talked to some people who they entered their debts into a debt repayment plan, all of them, and didn't have a credit card to their name or anything that they could use. And so for them, they would not be able to run a Velocity Banking strategy. They have to wait a little bit until they can get a card in order to do that, so that they can learn, right, how to run finances a little bit different. So that's why we talk about these debt repayment plans being predatory, you guys, because if you enter every tool you have into them, you don't have any options at the end of the day. Lucky for these guys here, they didn't enter everything into that repayment program. And so they did have some options to them. All right. So they had some options, but aside from that, they learned about home equity lines of credit. Let me put it that way, because they didn't understand home equity lines of credit. They didn't even know that there was something called a home equity line of credit. And so when they started watching the channel, they then learned that maybe this was a possibility, but then immediately discounted it, thinking that they weren't going to be able to qualify because one has very poor credit. Okay. And so they learned something different. Like I tell you guys all the time, go and ask. Go to your bank, ask questions, because when we assume things, well, we all know what assuming does, right? Let's not go there. But when we assume things, we end up not seeing potential or not realizing potential because we think we know everything about something, right? And so that's where you have to ask questions, and you ask questions of your bankers, ask questions of those credit cards, so that you can learn something new about them that maybe you didn't know before, to be able to change your situation, such as these guys did. Okay, so again, Velocity Banking, we know it requires a line of credit in order to be able to work a Velocity Banking strategy. Now, if you have a credit card or other line, Velocity Banking can work for you even if you've entered debt into a consolidation program, such as the student scenario. And it just depends on what you've entered in there and what tools you have to work with. So let's talk about these guys. Let's go through that. Let's go see what their situation was and how we then are able to get them out of these debts. All right. Now, when they went to their bank, they would not have been able to get a home equity line of credit if they didn't enter all of the debts into it that they had currently. Okay. It just wouldn't have worked for them because they would have been, upside down. They were upside down, right? So continuing on such, in the traditional banking system, they were not going to get anywhere because they were negative. All right. Every month they were negative. So there was something else they had to do in order to dig themselves out. This is an enormous relief for this couple, an enormous relief for them. All right. So let's get into it. So there is hope even when things look bleak. And I want to mention that because, there's a lot of negativity out there. And sometimes we beat ourselves up over things that, either sometimes you get into debt because of something that you don't have control over. Sometimes you do have control over it. And sometimes you have to make some changes. And so, we're not here to lecture you. We're here to help you find your way through that. So these guys have a nice income. Okay. Their income is $12,580. Their total expenses are $12,615, which means their cash flow in this case is negative. All right. But we can overcome that, thankfully. So they currently have a mortgage and the payment on that is $1,382. They have a car loan. They actually have 3 cars. 2 of them are, vehicles that they drive. The other one is a car that they want to fix up. And so, they do have 3 vehicles here. So car 1 is at $28,000 balance. I'm sorry, $28,274 is the balance on that. And the payment is $1,040. You guys, these car payments are ridiculous, just ridiculous. Okay. So maybe think about what you're doing before you get some of these cars. I've learned my lesson. I had an expensive car at one point and I never want to go down that road again, spending that kind of money for what? For what? At the end of the day, for what? Anyway, so their payment is $1,040 at 5.25%. They have 2 years and 6 months left to pay on that. They will pay $2,014 at the end of that time frame. I believe this was a 60 month car. Yeah, a 60-month loan on that. So they've already paid, right? They've already paid some. This is the debt that they have left. The interest debt, I should clarify. Now, car 2 is at $14,897. $685 is the payment on that. Again, another high payment at 5.7%. They have 1 year and 11 months left on that. So they have left to pay in interest $845. Now, car loan 3 here is $7,406 is the balance. The payment is $268. It's at 6.6%. 2 years and 6 months left on that, and they will pay $648 in interest still. Now, the total of these debts here, not including the mortgage, right? Because I didn't include the mortgage, but the total of the debts here for the cars is $50,577. All right. And so their monthly payments with the mortgage and these car loans add up to $3,375. And then their interest that they will pay if they continue on in the traditional banking system, right? And for most of these, they will. They're going to pay $3,507 there. All right. So I separated them out because we're not going to pay off all of these. We are going to pay off this car here plus these debts. All right. So I did separate these out for you. Now, they're loans, right? And so there's only $3,507 left on that. We all know that loans are less expensive. However, they have paid a ton of money already up front, and I didn't calculate that in for you. I probably could have done that to show you what they paid total, but this is what they have left. Okay. So American Express, this is their big one. Okay. This is a biggie right here. It's $36,382. The monthly payment on that is $1,182 for that debt. It is, oh, I forgot my interest rates here. Sorry, guys. I know this one is 27%. The Chase card, I believe, was 25%. And then the personal loan there, I think that is 8.9%, I believe. Okay. And if I'm wrong on that, I'll correct it later for you. But I'm pretty sure that's what those are. All right. Anyway, sorry about that. So American Express, right? It is $36,382. $1,182 is the payment, 27%. It'll take 4 years and 5 months to complete this. that means they will pay $26,253 in interest debt for $36,000. $36,000. That is how much they're going to pay. These credit cards can eat you alive if you don't learn how to run them. Now we have a Chase card. $15,300 is the balance on that. They're paying $472 a month, 25% interest rate, 4.7 years it'll take them to complete this in the traditional banking system, meaning they will pay $10,462 in interest debt on that. Now, the personal loan, $14,207, $371 is the payment on that, 8.9%, 3 years, 9 months, for a total of $2,496 is what they will pay traditionally to finish that. So what do we have in total here on these three? Okay, $65,000. So $65,889 is our debt on that. They have in payments $2,025, and their interest debt is $39,211 in interest debt. All right, so right now they are in a debt. They had a debt settlement that they were working with. They have a repayment plan. They owe $2,000 a month for that, you guys. This is the scary thing. A lot of times you guys can take care of those debts yourself. You can renegotiate them yourself. You can take care of them yourself. If nothing else, you can run them through a velocity banking strategy yourself. So what did they do? They have paid 20 to 25% on those debts. So they've paid a lot of money there, okay, to enter that debt repayment plan. And that's ridiculous. You guys, I don't want to see that. I don't want to see you do that when you can take care of your own debts. All right. Water under the bridge. They only have a year left to pay this. So they're going to carry it out, and we are going to take care of the other debts here. So they were able to obtain a home equity line of credit. Okay. Wife couldn't be on it because of the debts that she had. All right. And the debt settlement and all of that. So she could not be on it. So her husband now is on the home equity line of credit. And so he is on it, but just because they're both not on it, obviously they're going to be using the shared income, right? So they can take care of these debts. And in a way, it was a blessing in disguise because they were able to then get a home equity line when they didn't think they could because they were worried about her. So thankfully, they were able to do this, and now they're going to breathe much easier, all right? And obviously they are, because we're going to take a look at this and we're going to see how quickly they get out of this debt, all right? So what happens here? We pay off this car, we pay off the American Express, the Chase, the personal loan. So those three add up to 65, but we're going to take care of this card too, because at this point, why not? We can fit it in there. So we're going to take care of it and get this payment back. So here's what that looks like. If their expenses are $12,615, we now subtract out the $268. We subtract out the $2025, and that leaves us with $10,322 as new expenses. Okay, that's what our new expenses are. Now, we know that with home equity lines of credit, we can put our entire income in, not having to hold anything out into our checking account, and we can run all of our expenses out. All right. You can't do that with a credit card. You have to hold certain things out and leave it back in your checking account, because you can't pay everything through credit cards. You can't pay other credit cards, and you can't pay loans. Okay. While it is still advantageous to do it in a lot of cases, right? Because you're still putting income in and running expenses out. You just aren't going to do it quite as fast as you would with a home equity. Not only that, or a personal line, I should say. Not only that, those lines of credit typically have lower interest rates. Okay. Obviously, we know these credit cards, if you look at them, obviously 25, 27, right? Higher. But their home equity line of credit for $76,000 is at 10.6%. So they're going to be able to do this at a lot less cost to them, right? And through that average daily balance, they're going to drop their interest and drop their balances quickly. So we then have $73,295, this plus this, and we're putting all of our income into that line of credit, which drops us to $60,715 immediately, right? Right away. So they drop it immediately down to $60,715 as soon as they put their income in. Now, We don't really have to worry about micropaying when it comes to lines of credit like this, because banks don't tend to cut your line amount, right? Because it's already negotiated, it's in a contract. They don't cut the line like that, all right? That's not something that they usually do. So we don't have to worry about micropay. We can put the money in and we can run our expenses out, and we're usually just fine. Now, if that has changed and anybody has experienced that, let me know in the comments. I'd like to hear that, because in my experience, I was a banker, I was a branch manager years ago. That didn't happen. So if that is happening out there, please let us know. I'd like to, be clued in on that. Okay, so 60,715. We put our income in 10,322, and I'm sorry, our expenses come out of that, right? So we're at 60,715, and then our expenses come out, okay, or they come back onto the line of credit, right? And then we have our interest, which is $591, right? And so we have to calculate our interest as well, because we don't get this money for free, right? We don't. We still owe interest. The bank's got to get their money. So that means it brings us back up to $71,628. Now, I do this all the time for you because it's very important. How do we calculate the interest? How do we know what our interest is going to be month over month over month when we run a velocity banking strategy? It's very simple, okay? Again, you guys, not wanting to overwhelm you, because this strategy, velocity banking, is very simple. Anything new is probably going to be overwhelming at first, but once you learn it, and you guys, we have a course coming out that teaches you from A to Z, very simply, step by step, how to do this, okay? Very simply. Lots of different strategies inside of that, multiple card strategies, multiple cards and loans, how to do all of this, okay? So we lay it out very simply. This is very important, because I don't want you guys to be overwhelmed by velocity banking. It is not difficult once you learn it. Anything new is difficult before you know how to do it, right? And as soon as you get into it, you've learned it and it's easy. All right, so we add the 73. So we're going to take our high balance, right, the 73, we add it to our low balance. All right, so let's do that. So we've got 73, 295 plus 60, 715 equals 134.10. We then divide that by 2 to get our average, okay, which is $67.05. So we get our average. Now that we have our average, we have to multiply it by our interest rate, okay? So I'm going to multiply that by 0.106, because, or you could do it by, you can multiply by the percentage, but I turned it into a fraction. Okay, so that gives me $7,102 for the entire year, because that's a year's worth of interest. I don't want a year. I want 1 month only, because we know every month is going to go down. So now I have to take that and divide it by 12. Okay, so I divide it by 12, and that's how I get my 591. All right. So then I would do the exact same thing then to calculate this interest right here. I'm going to do the 71,628 plus 59,048, add it together, divide it by 2, multiply it by my interest, and then divide by 12 to give me the 577. And you can see that is lower, right? So it's lower because we've significantly dropped our balance, all right? We've significantly dropped it. So we run this strategy, okay? So we're going to run out this strategy. Now, something I want to mention here. A lot of times when you get home equity lines of credit, you may have an interest-only line of credit, okay? So if it's interest-only, then you're going to be paying $647 at this amount here, at the high amount, okay? So if you weren't running a velocity banking strategy and you were going to have an interest-only line of credit, you're never going to pay it off. You're pretty much never going to, right? But these lines of credit that they give will sometimes have interest only, all right? So that's, one thing that, if people are going to park money, they might have a special thing they want to do with their money. So they want to make a purchase and then they do this interest only thing, right, that these lines of credit have. So at $647, it's never going anywhere. Now, if the other way they calculate it is going to be your interest plus 1%, okay? So that means you're going to take your interest and you're going to add, and you're going to do 1%. So it would be 733, okay, plus the 647. The 647 is the interest, is at the 10%. And then the 733 is taking this dollar amount, right, the 73,295, and multiplying it by 1%, okay? And that number is then added to the interest, which means if I were to set this up as a home equity line of credit and it was interest in 1%, then I would be paying $1,380 a month for this loan, okay? Or this line of credit. It's not a loan, line of credit. So that isn't much different than the 2025, right? It's not. So when we run a velocity banking strategy, the advantage is putting your income in and dropping the balance, putting your income in and dropping the balance. That is the advantage. And when we do that, what happens is this strategy here, okay, it takes them 32 months. All right. So let me write that down for you. Okay, so let's write that down. We'll get rid of this here. When we run the velocity banking strategy, it's going to take them 32 months, okay? And it's going to cost them $10,936 in interest, right? So $10,936. Now, 32 months versus, what is it? 4 years, 5 months, 4 years, 7 months, 3 years, 9, 39,211. But we also have to add the 648. Granted, it's not a ton when you look at the 39, right? But we do have to add that in. So let's say $40,000, right? $40,000 is what it would have cost them to do this without running it through velocity banking strategy, right? Just keeping it on the traditional trajectory. But running it through your velocity banking strategy, putting your income in, taking and running your expenses out of it, 32 months, so less than 3 years, and it only costs them $10,000, let's say $11,000 for shiz and giggles, right? So let's say that. So this is why we learn velocity banking. Don't be overwhelmed by it. It is one of the greatest ways to manage your finances, to work your debt down using these debt tools, all right? These debt tools are amazing. So no matter what your situation is, right? Learn to control debt using lines of credit. Even if you're in a debt repayment program, such as these guys are, it may be okay. And you may surprise yourself. You may be able to do the unexpected and still be able to run velocity banking. Have a great day, and I will see you in the next video.